The First Encounter. Personal Log of Admiral Kellen, 1st Contact Division, Galactic Alliance. Date, April 12, 2165. As I sit in my quarters aboard the starship Celestial Dawn, I can hardly contain my anticipation for what lies ahead. Today marks a pivotal moment in our history, the first official contact between humanity and the Zorathians. For years, we have watched them from afar, studying their transmissions and attempting to decipher their complex culture through our limited understanding of interstellar communication. The Zorathians are known for their advanced technology and unique social structures. Their civilization is built on principles that seem alien to us. They communicate not only through spoken language but also through intricate gestures and physical expressions that we have yet to fully grasp. Our diplomatic teams have spent countless cycles preparing for this encounter, but I fear we may still be woefully unprepared. As I approach the docking bay where our guests will arrive, I can feel my heart racing in my chest, an unusual sensation for someone in my position. My training has equipped me to handle high-stakes negotiations and complex political scenarios, yet nothing could prepare me for this moment. I am about to meet beings from another world, intelligent life forms who may hold keys to our future. Suddenly, the air is filled with a low hum as the Zorathian shuttle descends gracefully toward our docking bay. My team stands at attention, a mix of excitement and anxiety palpable among us. As the shuttle doors slide open, I catch my first glimpse of them, tall figures with iridescent skin that shifts colors in response to their emotions. Their eyes are large and expressive, reflecting a depth of intelligence that is both fascinating and intimidating. Stepping forward is Zorathian diplomat Zalera, a name I had memorized from our briefings but now feels surreal as it echoes in my mind. She approaches me with an elegant stride, her posture radiating confidence and grace. As she nears, I instinctively extend my hand, a gesture I have come to know as universal among humans. But then she does something unexpected. She tilts her head slightly and raises her arms in a manner that seems both inviting and foreign. My mind races. What does this mean? Is it a greeting? A show of dominance? My diplomatic training kicks in as I remind myself to remain composed despite my growing unease. Admiral Kellen, she says in a melodic voice that resonates through the chamber, it is an honor to meet you. I return her greeting with a smile, though inside I am grappling with uncertainty about how to respond appropriately. The moment stretches out as we stand there, her arms raised and my hand extended, until finally, she steps forward and envelopes me in what can only be described as an embrace. My body stiffens instinctively. This is not how we greet one another. Yet there is warmth in her gesture, a genuine attempt at connection that transcends our cultural barriers. As she pulls away, I notice my crew's astonished expressions mirrored in their wide eyes. "Welcome to our ship," Zalera says earnestly, her iridescent skin shifting hues from deep blue to soft green, a sign of her pleasure. I manage to nod, still processing what just happened while suppressing an urge to retreat into familiar territory. "Thank you," I reply cautiously. It's good to be here." As we move into the ship's main hall for further discussions, I can feel the tension lingering in the air like static electricity. My team follows closely behind us, exchanging bewildered glances as we navigate through corridors adorned with bioluminescent flora that pulse gently with light. Throughout our discussions on trade agreements and technological exchanges, I find myself distracted by Zalera's expressive gestures. Her hands dance gracefully as she speaks, emphasizing points with fluid movements that seem almost hypnotic. It's captivating yet disorienting. Every time she reaches out or leans closer during our conversation, I feel an involuntary urge to step back, a remnant of my human instincts clashing with her openness. As hours pass in what feels like mere moments, we finally conclude our meeting with a shared understanding, an agreement forged not just through words but through an unspoken connection that lingers between us. Yet as we prepare to part ways, Zalera surprises me once again by extending her arms toward my team members one by one, each receiving her embrace without hesitation or fear. They return her gestures with smiles that seem genuine despite their initial trepidation. I watched this unfold from a distance, feeling increasingly out of place among them. What was meant to be a formal encounter has transformed into something entirely different, a blending of cultures that leaves me questioning everything I thought I knew about diplomacy. As we bid farewell at the docking bay once more, Zalera turns toward me with an earnest expression that cuts through my uncertainty like a blade. "Admiral Kellen," she says softly, "let us continue this journey together." In that moment, amidst the swirling colors of her skin, I realize that this encounter has changed me forever. It was not just about treaties or trade, it was about connection, a reminder that beneath our differences lies a shared desire for understanding. As I return aboard Celestial Dawn, I cannot shake off the feeling that today marked not only our first contact with an alien civilization but also a profound shift in how we perceive each other across galaxies. First Contact. Personal Log of Admiral Z, First Contact Division, Galactic Confederation. Date, September 15, 2157. Looking back, we should have seen it coming. The warning signs were there in their transmissions, their media, what they call entertainment broadcasts, but no, we were too focused on their nuclear arsenals and rapid technological advancements. What fools we were. None of those posed the true threat. I still remember that first meeting vividly. Our delegation had spent 3 standard cycles preparing for humanity's official welcome into the Galactic Confederation. We studied their customs, languages, and social structures. We thought we were ready. But we weren't ready at all. Commander Brick was the first human to board our vessel. He emerged from their shuttle looking exactly as our briefings had described, bipedal and large with that bizarre patch of hair on top, dressed in formal military attire. Everything seemed to be proceeding according to protocol until he did it. He extended his upper appendage toward me, just thrust it out there with 5 digits spread wide like some kind of tentacular attack formation. My secondary heart nearly seized. "Commander Brick," he boomed, advancing with his appendage extended. "Pleasure to meet you. Looking forward to working together." I froze. My diplomatic training hadn't covered this scenario. Was this a threat display? A prelude to combat? I watched in horror as his appendage hung there between us, waiting. "Sir," my assistant Nixit whispered through our neural link, "the briefing mentioned this. It's called a handshake, it's their standard greeting." A greeting? They physically touch each other as a greeting? Barbaric. Primitive. Unsanitary. But I was the senior diplomat, I had to maintain composure. Slowly fighting every natural instinct within me, I extended my own upper appendage. What happened next haunts me still. He grabbed my appendage, actually grabbed it, and then great stars above. He moved it up and down with surprising force multiple times. My emergency spores nearly deployed right there in the reception chamber. "Firm grip you got there," Commander Brick said enthusiastically while pumping my appendage even more vigorously. "We're going to get along just fine." I tried to maintain my diplomatic poise while simultaneously signaling my medical team to stand down. The rest of the human delegation was emerging from their shuttle, all of them with their appendages extended, advancing on my staff like a horde of touch-hungry primitives. That's when real chaos began. Lieutenant Grix, bless her sensitive neural clusters, completely lost control of her chromatic response. One moment she was maintaining a dignified diplomatic coloration, the next she was cycling through the entire panic spectrum, purple, green, infrared, ultraviolet. She hit frequencies I didn't even know she could produce. "They're everywhere," she shrieked over the neural link. "Captain Voss keeps trying to make our appendages oscillate. Why won't they stop touching us?" I watched in mounting horror as Captain Diana Voss, humanity's leading xenobiologist, worked her way through my entire staff, spreading what we would later learn to call the friendly handshake epidemic. Even our most stoic officers were succumbing. Commander PCE Teal, a veteran of 3 first contact missions, had retreated into his protective membrane while Counselor Eth was openly weeping geometric shapes. And through it all, the humans just kept smiling. They kept extending those terrifying appendages and insisting on establishing physical contact like some kind of barbaric social ritual, which of course is exactly what it was. Once we're done with introductions, Admiral Brick called out cheerfully while still vigorously pumping my appendage, "We'd love to give you a tour of our ship. Show you some real human hospitality." Human hospitality? I didn't know it then, but those 2 words would soon become the most feared phrase in the entire Confederation, because if there's one thing we quickly learned about humans, it's that their idea of hospitality always involves touching. My security chief's voice crackled through the neural link tight with panic. He said, "Sir, their ship's medical scans just came back. You're not going to believe this. They greet everyone this way." My primary stomach dropped. What kind of deranged species had we just invited into the Confederation? More importantly, I glanced at Brick's still grinning face. What other horrifying customs were they waiting to spring on us? Little did I know, the handshakes were just the beginning. We hadn't even gotten to their concept of hugging yet. Epidemic of touch. Personal log of Admiral Zizak, 1st Contact Division, Galactic Confederation. Date, December 21, 2157. The situation has become dire. What started as a concerning diplomatic quirk has evolved into a full-blown cultural epidemic. The humans aren't just maintaining their physical contact protocols, they're spreading them. Reports are flooding in from across the galaxy, and I fear we may have underestimated the extent of their influence. Last week, a Centurion trade delegate ended negotiations with a high five. A proximate ambassador initiated a fist bump during a peace conference. 3 days ago, the entire Bialjuan Youth Council was caught practicing elaborate handshake sequences in the parliamentary bathroom. The humans call it cultural exchange, we call it mimetic warfare. The Relian incident was the tipping point. Their ambassador, always a bit of a radical, attended one of Commander Steele's infamous diplomatic mixers. The next morning, she greeted the High Council with what humans call a chest bump. The recording went viral across the galactic information networks. Now we're getting reports of chest bump greeting circles breaking out in diplomatic assemblies across 3 spiral arms. Isn't it beautiful how we're all coming together? Ambassador Rodriguez asked during yesterday's crisis meeting while simultaneously trying to teach the Andromedan representative something called the secret handshake. Beautiful isn't the word I'd use, terrifying perhaps, catastrophic definitely. Do you know how long it took us to establish the standard non-contact greeting protocols? 12,000 years of careful diplomatic refinement undone by a few months of human friendliness. The data is horrifying. Physical greeting incidents have increased 3,000% in the past month alone. We've documented at least 17 distinct variations of the high five spreading through junior diplomatic ranks. The human concept of the group hug has infected at least 6 previously touch-averse species, and don't even get me started on what happened when they introduced trust falls to the hive mind collective. Commander Steele seems to take particular delight in what he calls breaking down barriers. Last week, he somehow convinced the normally ethereal Nebulan to participate in something called a conga line. Do you have any idea how difficult it is to maintain diplomatic composure while watching gaseous beings attempt to hold onto each other's particle clouds? But the real horror? It's working. Our efficiency experts can't deny the data. Trade agreements concluded 42% faster when sealed with a handshake. Peace treaties show a 37% higher success rate when negotiated by diplomats who engage in physical greetings. Even the mathematically precise algorithms admit that their equations solve faster after a friendly fist bump. Touch creates trust, Rodriguez keeps saying, usually while wrapping her arms around some poor unsuspecting diplomat. You can't build real relationships through force fields. The younger generation is particularly susceptible. We've had to ban human secret handshakes in the Diplomatic Academy after discovering an underground handshake design club. Students were actually competing to create the most elaborate greeting sequences. The winning team's 17-step handshake routine is now being performed in diplomatic outposts across the galaxy. Even my own staff is showing signs of corruption. Yesterday I caught my security chief practicing what humans call adapt with Commander Steele. When confronted, he claimed it was opposition research, but I saw the smile on his face. All three of them, the Confederation's Cultural Preservation Committee, is in a panic. How do you maintain traditional non-contact protocols when half your junior diplomats are inventing new handshake variations? The Eruan delegate suggested we might need to accept this as cultural evolution. He was immediately tested for human psychological contamination. Most alarming of all, we've discovered that physical greetings appear to be gateway behavior. After mastering handshakes, many diplomats progress to high fives, then fist bumps, and eventually, I shudder to even write this, full frontal hugging. The humans meanwhile just keep smiling and extending those terrible friendly appendages. As I sit here reflecting on our current state, I can't help but wonder where this will lead us. Are we on the brink of losing our cultural identity? Will we become more like them? Or will they adapt and learn from us? Perhaps there is some merit in their approach. After all, they seem genuinely happy and engaged with one another. But as I watch my fellow diplomats succumb to this strange new world of touch-based greetings and physical contact, I can't shake off my fears for our future. I must convene an emergency meeting with the Council tomorrow to discuss our next steps. We need strategies for counteracting this epidemic before it spreads beyond our control. The spread of human customs. Personal log of Junior Attaché Vixtrix, Galactic Confederation. Date, January 15, 2158. I never thought I would find myself in this position. As a junior attaché, my role was to observe, learn, and assist in the diplomatic processes of our confederation. Yet here I am, amidst the chaos of human customs infiltrating our diplomatic culture, and I find myself both fascinated and horrified. It began innocently enough. After the infamous chest bump incident at the Relian summit, I noticed a shift among my peers. The older diplomats were in a state of panic, while the younger ones, myself included, were intrigued by the humans' approach to relationships. They seemed to thrive on physical interaction, and despite our training to avoid such displays, I found myself drawn to their warmth. Vixtrix called out my colleague, Lieutenant Kixes, as he approached me in the common area. "You've got to see this." He held up a holoscreen displaying a video from one of the human diplomatic mixers. It showed Commander Steele leading a conga line of various species, including Nebulans and Relians, all laughing and swaying together in unison. The sight was both absurd and oddly captivating. "Look at how they interact," Kixes exclaimed. "They're breaking down barriers with every step." I couldn't help but smile at the sight. The humans had a way of making connections that seemed genuine and effortless. As much as I wanted to resist their influence, there was an undeniable allure to their customs. Over the next few weeks, I found myself experimenting with human greetings during casual encounters with fellow diplomats. At first, it was just a simple high five or fist bump, nothing too extravagant. But with each interaction, I felt a rush of excitement that I had never experienced in our traditional greeting rituals. However, not everyone shared my enthusiasm. The Cultural Preservation Committee was in an uproar over what they deemed the contamination of our diplomatic integrity. Meetings were held daily to discuss how to combat this spread of human customs. They proposed stricter regulations against physical contact during diplomatic engagements. "Vixtrix," said Ambassador Rodriguez during one such meeting, her voice laced with urgency. "We cannot allow these customs to infiltrate our culture. We must maintain our identity." I understood her concerns but couldn't shake the feeling that perhaps there was something valuable in what the humans offered, a chance for connection that transcended our traditional barriers. One afternoon, while practicing my newly acquired handshake techniques in front of a mirror, purely for research purposes, of course, I received an unexpected visit from Commander Steele himself. He entered my quarters with his usual exuberance. "Hey there. I heard you've been practicing," he said with a wide grin. I froze, caught off guard by his sudden appearance. Yes. Just academic research." I stammered. He chuckled and stepped closer. "You know, you don't have to be so formal all the time. Let's try something fun." Before I could protest, he reached out and initiated a complex handshake that involved multiple spins and claps before ending with a high five. It was exhilarating. Laughter bubbled up inside me as we finished the routine. "See? It's all about having fun and building trust," he said enthusiastically. As we continued practicing various greetings together, I felt a sense of camaraderie forming between us, a bond that transcended our species' differences. For the first time since this cultural upheaval began, I felt hopeful about our future interactions with humans. However, as word spread about my newfound affinity for human customs, my colleagues began to look at me differently. Whispers circulated about my betrayal of our traditions. Some even suggested that I might be under human psychological influence, a claim that stung deeply. One day during lunch in the cafeteria, I overheard two senior diplomats discussing me in hushed tones. "Have you seen Vixtrix? She's practically embracing their customs," one said disdainfully. "It's embarrassing," replied the other. "We should report her before she infects others." Their words cut through me like ice. How could they not see the potential for growth and understanding? Wasn't diplomacy about finding common ground? Determined not to let their negativity deter me, I decided to host an informal gathering to showcase some human customs, an opportunity for my colleagues to experience firsthand what I had come to appreciate so deeply. I sent out invitations for what I called Cultural Exchange Day, encouraging everyone to join in on games and activities inspired by human traditions. To my surprise, many accepted, even those who had previously scoffed at my interest in their ways. As the day approached, excitement bubbled within me. Perhaps this would be a chance for us to bridge the gap between our cultures. When the day finally arrived, laughter filled the air as diplomats from various species gathered in the common area. We set up stations for different activities, high-five challenges, trust falls, which elicited nervous laughter, and even a group hug demonstration led by none other than Ambassador Rodriguez herself. To my astonishment, even some of the most resistant diplomats began participating, tentatively at first but gradually embracing the spirit of fun and connection that permeated the room. As we engaged in these activities together, something remarkable happened. Barriers began to dissolve. Laughter echoed through the hall as we shared stories and experiences while navigating through these new customs together. By the end of the day, it was clear that we had forged new connections, ones that transcended species and traditions alike. The atmosphere buzzed with energy as we celebrated our differences while embracing newfound similarities. As I looked around at my colleagues, smiling faces illuminated by joy, I realized that perhaps this cultural exchange wasn't just about adopting human customs, it was about fostering understanding and building bridges between worlds. In that moment, I felt proud to be part of this evolving narrative, a narrative where touch could lead not just to chaos but also to unity. The crisis deepens. Personal log of Admiral Zakut, 1st Contact Division, Galactic Confederation. Date, February 10, 2158. The situation has escalated beyond our worst fears. What began as a curious exploration of human customs has morphed into a full-blown crisis that threatens the very fabric of our diplomatic protocols. As I sit here in my quarters, I can hardly believe the reports flooding in from across the galaxy. The humans have not only maintained their physical contact rituals, they have weaponized them in ways we never anticipated. Just yesterday, I received a transmission from the Bialjuan ambassador. He reported that during a routine trade negotiation, a human delegate initiated what they call a group hug. The result? A complete breakdown of the meeting and an emergency evacuation of all non-human delegates. The Belgian ambassador described it as chaotic joy, but I can assure you it felt more like diplomatic sabotage. Our own attempts to establish boundaries have been met with resistance. The Cultural Preservation Committee convened last week to discuss measures to mitigate this crisis, but every suggestion was met with skepticism or outright laughter. Why not just embrace it, someone suggested, and I could feel my secondary heart rate spike at the thought. The younger diplomats are particularly susceptible to this contagion. I caught Junior Attaché Vixtrix leading a workshop on human greeting customs last week. She had gathered a group of eager young diplomats, all practicing high fives and fist bumps while giggling like hatchlings. When I confronted her about it, she merely shrugged and said, "It's just fun. We're building connections." Connections? Is that what we're calling this madness? I watched in horror as she demonstrated a new variation of the handshake she had created with Commander Steele, an elaborate sequence involving spins and claps that seemed more like a dance than a greeting. The humans seem to view our horror as some sort of challenge. They've taken it upon themselves to develop personalized greetings for each species they encounter. Cultural adaptation, they call it. I call it psychological warfare. Meanwhile, Commander Steele has become something of a celebrity among the younger diplomats. His antics have inspired countless imitations, and I fear he is leading them down a path from which there may be no return. Just yesterday, he proposed introducing trust falls into our next interspecies conference, a concept that sends shivers down my spine. Trust falls build camaraderie, he argued passionately during our last council meeting. They create bonds that transcend species. I couldn't help but wonder if he had lost his mind entirely. The very idea of falling backward into the arms of another diplomat, especially one from an alien species, was enough to make my spores quiver in anxiety. As if things couldn't get worse, reports are coming in from various sectors about spontaneous hugging events breaking out in diplomatic circles. Just last week, an entire assembly of Relians participated in what they called a hugathon, where they embraced every delegate present. The footage went viral across the Galactic networks, and now everyone wants to join in on the madness. Ambassador Rodriguez has taken it upon herself to lead these events, claiming that they foster goodwill and understanding among species. "We're building bridges," she exclaims with enthusiasm while enveloping unsuspecting diplomats in her infamous bear hugs. But what happens when those bridges collapse? What happens when our carefully constructed protocols are dismantled by the very customs we sought to understand? I fear we are on the brink of losing our cultural identity entirely. The Confederation Council is demanding answers. How had we allowed this to happen? How had our extensive preparation missed this crucial aspect of human behavior? Our xenoanthropologists have been working around the clock to analyze this phenomenon, but their findings only deepen my unease. Humans moderate their physical contact with new acquaintances, one report stated ominously. What we're experiencing is their restrained behavior. Restrained behavior? If this is restraint, I shudder to think what their true customs entail. As if sensing my growing concern, Commander Steele approached me after the council meeting yesterday with his characteristic grin plastered across his face. "You know, Admiral," he said cheerfully, "once you embrace physical contact, you'll see how liberating it is." Liberating? My anxiety spores were fully deployed at this point, and I couldn't help but feel trapped in an escalating nightmare. The Cultural Preservation Committee is at its wit's end. 3 more instructors have requested transfers to deep space assignments due to the overwhelming stress caused by these interactions. Our chief cultural advisor has started sleeping in a containment pod for fear of human touch. And still, the humans persist, smiling and extending those terrible friendly appendages with every encounter. I must take decisive action before it's too late. Tomorrow morning I will convene an emergency meeting with the Confederation Council to discuss potential strategies for regaining control over our diplomatic protocols before we lose everything we've worked so hard to build. This cannot continue. We must find a way to restore order before we become completely engulfed by human customs.